right, so get ready because we're diving into one of the most famous haunted house cases ever. The Rhode Island farmhouse that inspired The Conjuring. You guys wanted more in haunted houses. And this one is a doozy.
Oh, yeah.
A family of 7 moves into this centuries-old farmhouse, and things get super creepy. We're going to dig into the Perron family's experiences, see how their claims stack up against like historical records, and maybe we'll get a little closer to understanding, what makes a house haunted.
Yeah, what's so fascinating about this case is that, it's not just spooky noises or like flickering lights. The Perrons, they reported like a decade of intense paranormal activity. And we actually have Andrea Perron's memoir written years later, which gives us this really chilling, detailed account of what she and her family
I
endured.
mean, a decade. Imagine living in a house like that for 10 years.
Right.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We've got Roger and Carolyn Perron and their 5 daughters. They move into this old farmhouse in 1971. They probably thought they were, getting a piece of idyllic New England history. But what they got was a whole lot more.
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting for paranormal fans. The early events as described by the children, they seem almost playful, even innocent. Like young Nancy, for instance, she had an imaginary friend named Manny, who she claimed to interact with regularly.
Imaginary friends, especially in old houses like that, always make my hair stand on end. Is that something you commonly encounter in haunted house cases?
It is. Children very often report these kinds of encounters. Some paranormal investigators believe that children are more sensitive to like subtle energy shifts or presences that adults just miss. Of course, psychologists, they might offer other explanations, like the power of suggestion, or, the way that a child's imagination interacts with their environment.
So is it all in their heads? Or could there be something more to it?
Right. That's the question, isn't it? Then you have things like the parents' pantry door constantly swinging open, no matter how many times they closed it.
Classic haunted house stuff, right? But it seems like Carolyn, the mother, she had the most terrifying experiences. We're talking a near-death experience with a falling scythe in the barn. And even a violent attack by a coat hanger. That's not your typical creaking floorboards kind of haunting.
Right, exactly. Carolyn's experiences, they introduce this much more sinister element. Now we're seeing potential object manipulation, maybe even a cold spot in the barn, which some believe could be linked to a spirit's presence.
It's almost like the haunting escalated, became more aggressive as time went on.
That's a pattern you see sometimes in these cases. And what makes Carolyn's account so compelling is her methodical approach. Faced with these terrifying apparitions, she did something pretty unusual. She sketched them.
She sketched the ghosts, like sat down with a pencil and paper and drew what she saw.
Exactly. She describes seeing this old woman with a broken neck wearing a green dress. Instead of just being completely overwhelmed by fear, she tried to document the experience as accurately as possible.
And that's not all right. One of her daughters, Andrea, claimed to have dreamt of this same figure, giving it this chilling sense of reality.
That's right. Multiple witnesses experiencing very similar phenomena that really strengthens the case for something genuinely paranormal happening. It's not just one person's imagination, running wild.
So faced with these increasingly terrifying events, Carolyn, being the resourceful woman that she was, decides to dig into the history of the house. She learns that the Arnold family owned the property for generations before them. Smart move, right? You want to understand a haunting, you got to understand the history of a land.
Absolutely. Investigating a location's history is crucial in paranormal investigations. It's like piecing together a puzzle. Who lived here? Who died here? Could their energy still be lingering, influencing the events happening now?
And in this case, the history was pretty dark. Carolyn uncovered some disturbing details about the Arnold family, including 2 suicides that happened right there on the property. One of them, John Allen Arnold, ingested rat poison in the house.
Oh, wow. That detail always sends chills down my spine. Remember Nancy's imaginary friend, Manny?
Oh, wow. You're not suggesting...
And it's a chilling thought, isn't it? Could Manny have been a manifestation of John Allen Arnold's energy somehow lingering in the house and interacting with Nancy?
Okay, that's officially creepy. But it gets even worse, doesn't it?
It does. Carolyn also discovered that Mrs. John Arnold hanged herself in the barn, in the exact same spot where Carolyn had that terrifying encounter with the falling scythe.
The same spot? Are you serious? That's too much of a coincidence to ignore.
It is a remarkable parallel, and it lends credence to the theory of residual energy, the idea that traumatic events can leave a sort of imprint on a location, an echo of the past that can still be felt or even witnessed.
All right, you've convinced me. This house is definitely haunted. But what about the knitting needle injury Carolyn suffered? Where does that fit into all of this?
Well, that injury is where the story takes this even darker turn. And it leads us to one of the most infamous figures in this haunting, Bathsheba Sherman. Local legend claims that Bathsheba was suspected of murdering an infant with a knitting needle back in the 1800s. Though she was never formally charged, rumors persisted that she was a witch who practiced dark magic.
Hold on, so we have potential ghost suicides, and now we're adding witchcraft to the mix? This is getting intense. A knitting needle injury, a suspected child murderer who may have used a knitting needle. Could there be a connection?
It's certainly a chilling possibility, and it's important to, consider the historical context. We're talking about rural New England in the 1800s, a time when belief in witchcraft was really widespread, particularly in these isolated communities. These beliefs, whether rooted in fact or superstition, they had a powerful impact on people's lives.
It's like stepping into a historical horror novel. But if Bathsheba died and was buried elsewhere, why would her spirit be haunting the Arnold farmhouse?
That's a question that has puzzled paranormal investigators for decades. Some believe that spirits can become attached to locations where they experienced really strong emotions, whether those are positive or negative. Perhaps Bathsheba, if she was indeed involved in the activities she was accused of, felt a connection to the property. Maybe she had a history there that we're not aware of.
Okay, now I'm picturing Bathsheba lurking in the shadows of this house, her energy somehow tied to this horrible act. But this is where the story takes a turn toward the legendary right, because this is when Ed and Lorraine Warren enter the picture. You can't talk about the Perron haunting without mentioning the Warrens.
Absolutely. By the time they arrived at the Arnold farmhouse, the Warrens were already well known in the field of paranormal investigation. Ed, a self-proclaimed demonologist, and Lorraine, a clairvoyant, had investigated numerous cases, often involving claims of demonic activity.
Wait, a demonologist? That sounds like something straight out of a movie. What exactly does a demonologist do?
A demonologist is someone who studies demons and their alleged influence on the human world. It's a controversial field, often associated with religious beliefs and practices. Ed Warren in particular believed that demons could attach themselves to individuals or locations, causing a range of paranormal phenomena.
And Lorraine, as a clairvoyant, would be able to sense these demonic presences, right?
That's the idea. Clairvoyance refers to the ability to perceive things beyond the normal senses. Lorraine Warren claimed to have the ability to see and communicate with spirits, including demonic entities.
So what did this paranormal power couple make of the Perron haunting? Did they confirm what Carolyn and her daughters had been experiencing?
Well, according to Lorraine, she immediately sensed a demonic presence in the house, particularly in the pantry. Remember, that's the same pantry door that kept mysteriously opening. And get this, Lorraine, independently of Carolyn's research, also claimed to have received the name Bathsheba.
Whoa. So we have multiple witnesses claiming to encounter the same spirit, a historical backstory that seems to connect with the events. And now we have the Warrens, with their unique expertise, confirming these claims.
It's a compelling set of circumstances, and it raises the stakes considerably. We're no longer just dealing with a possible haunting. Now, according to the Warrens, there's a demonic entity involved.
And that's where the seance comes in,
Right.
right? The Warrens believe that a seance was necessary to directly confront whatever was haunting the Perron family.
Yes, and this is where the case gets even more controversial. Seances are a highly debated practice in the paranormal community. Some believe they're a powerful tool for communication with spirits, while others warn of the dangers, arguing that they can open a doorway for negative entities to enter our world.
And in the Perron case, it sounds like the seance didn't exactly go smoothly. Did the furniture start moving and Carolyn had some kind of outburst?
According to Andrea's account, the seance was chaotic and terrifying. The table shook violently. Carolyn started speaking in tongues, and at one point her chair flew across the room with her still in it. It must have been a terrifying experience for everyone involved.
I can only imagine. So did the seance work? Did it get rid of the evil entity? Did the haunting stop?
That's where things get a bit ambiguous. Carolyn claimed to have no memory of the seance, but afterward there was a noticeable shift in her demeanor. She seemed calmer, more at peace.
So maybe the seance did something. Maybe it banished the entity or at least weakened its hold on Carolyn.
It's possible. Or perhaps the seance, despite its chaotic nature, provided some kind of catharsis for Carolyn, a release of pent-up fear and anxiety.
But the haunting didn't end there, did it? Carolyn had one final and very strange experience before the family finally moved out of the farmhouse.
That's right. And this last experience adds another layer of mystery to an already perplexing case.
So what was this final experience? Did she see Bathsheba again?
It wasn't Bathsheba. Carolyn was walking through the house one day, and she heard voices coming from the dining room.
Okay.
So curious, she peeked in, and she saw a family dressed in like old-fashioned clothing, just sitting around the table enjoying a meal.
Whoa.
It was as if she was witnessing a scene from the past, a glimpse into the lives of those who had lived in the house, before her.
Wow. So not just ghosts, but a potential time slip. This house really has it all. I've heard stories of people experiencing time slips in haunted locations,
Hmm.
but I always thought they were just, stories. What could explain something like that?
Well, that's one of the biggest mysteries in paranormal research. The idea that time might not be linear in certain places, that the past, present, and future could somehow converge, is a mind-boggling concept. Some researchers theorize that strong emotional energy or traumatic events could create a kind of temporal anomaly, a rift in the fabric of time, but it's all speculation at this point.
So we're left with more questions than answers,
Sure.
which I guess is part of the allure of the paranormal. But what happened to the Perron family after all this?
Oh.
Did they ever find peace?
Well, after enduring 10 years of these strange and often terrifying events, the Perrons finally moved out of the farmhouse. And Andrea, years later, she wrote her memoir, House of Darkness, House of Light, which, as we know, inspired the Conjuring film.
It's interesting how a personal story like that can capture the imagination of so many people. Even those who might be skeptical of the paranormal. It makes you wonder, what is it about haunted houses that fascinate us so much?
I think it taps into our primal fears, our curiosity about the unknown. Haunted houses, they represent the boundary between the world we understand and the world we don't. They make us question our reality, the nature of life and death, and the possibility that there might be more to existence than we can see or touch.
Well, after diving deep into the Perron family's experiences, sifting through the historical context and unpacking the Warrens' involvement, what do you think? Did the Perron family encounter real paranormal activity in that Rhode Island farmhouse? Or is there a more rational explanation for what they went through?
That's the beauty of this case, and really of any paranormal investigation. It's up to each individual to weigh the evidence, consider the possibilities, and draw their own conclusions. What we can say for sure is that the Perron family experienced something profound in that house, something that deeply affected them.
And that's what keeps us coming back for more, right? The mystery, the possibility, the thrill of exploring the unknown. If you're fascinated by the paranormal, and especially haunted houses, I definitely recommend checking out Andrea Perron's book. It's a chilling read that will stay with you long after you finish the last page.
And if tonight's deep dive has sparked your curiosity about the paranormal, I encourage you to keep exploring. Read more stories, research different theories, and maybe even do some investigating of your own. You never know what you might discover lurking in the shadows.
Well, that's it for this deep dive into one of the most infamous haunted houses in America. If you have a spooky story or a haunted house encounter you'd like to share, reach out to us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep those lights on, or maybe don't.